They thought it would be funny, 6 arrogant boys punching a disabled black girl in a wheelchair, right in the middle of school, because no one was watching. But the joke snapped in their faces the moment they realized the girl they cornered wasn't weak, wasn't powerless. She was FBI. And every punch they threw didn't hurt her future, it erased theirs. This isn't just a story of bullying. It's the moment karma showed up wearing a badge. The morning sun spilled across Crestwood High like a spotlight. Too bright, too sharp, too exposing for a girl who wanted nothing more than to stay invisible. Nalia Ward rolled quietly through the courtyard in her wheelchair, hands resting lightly on the rims, eyes low, heartbeat steady. She moved as if she were trained for silence, because she was. But no one at Crestwood knew that. To them, she was just the new black girl in a wheelchair. And in a place like this, that alone was enough to draw the wrong kind of attention. She didn't even make it halfway across the courtyard before the shadows fell over. Her 6 of them. Tall, broad, and already smirking. The varsity jackets, Crestwood's unofficial royalty, or, in reality, its plague. Rex Dalton stepped in front of her chair, blocking her path like he owned the ground she rolled on. His orange and white varsity jacket gleamed obnoxiously in the sun, matching the arrogance in his grin. Finn, Carter, Mason, and Troy closed in behind him, forming a tight circle around her. A trap disguised as a welcome committee. Well, Rex said, tilting his head as if admiring a new toy. Looks like Crestwood's got itself a new wheels girl. Laughter erupted behind him. Too loud, too eager, too rehearsed. Nalia kept her expression flat, almost bored, refusing to give them the entertainment they craved. She knew better than to react. She had been taught better. Rex didn't like that. He stepped closer. So close she could feel the warmth of his breath as he leaned down. "Did you come here to be our new mascot?" he whispered, voice dripping with mockery. Nalia lifted her gaze, slowly, calmly. Her eyes locked onto his steady, unshaken, sharp enough to cut. And that single look, that quiet defiance, lit something ugly inside Rex. It wasn't fear. It wasn't guilt. It was irritation pure. Stinging irritation that someone he deemed weak dared to meet him like an equal. Behind him, Mason kicked a table leg, sending a cup of soda crashing over. The sticky, cold liquid splashed across Nalia's uniform shirt, soaking into the white fabric. More laughter, more pointing, more cruelty disguised as high school fun. Nalia inhaled once, then exhaled. No flinch, no tears, no reaction. That made them laugh harder. But what none of them saw, what none of them could see, was the tiny device sewn into the inner seam of her blazer. A thin biometric wire, no thicker than a strand of hair, vibrated softly against her skin. The instant the soda hit her, the device triggered. A silent alert, a recording sequence, a transmission straight to a secure FBI channel. Because Nalia Ward wasn't just the girl in the wheelchair, she was a junior protective cadet, an undercover witness under federal monitoring. And every second of this interaction, every word, every shove, every drop of soda sliding down her uniform was being archived. But Rex didn't know that. Finn didn't know that. None of them had the slightest idea that they had just walked onto a battlefield they were wildly unprepared for. Rex chuckled and flicked a drop of soda off her shoulder with fake sympathy. "Ruined your little outfit, Wheels. My bad." Nalia didn't blink, didn't speak, didn't break eye contact. And that silence, that poised, measured silence, felt louder than any scream. A bell rang in the distance, but no one moved. The courtyard held its breath, because what looked like a harmless spill was about to spiral into something no one at Crestwood could imagine. Nalia had no idea that this spilled drink was only the beginning of a bloody, violent storm waiting for her at lunchtime. The outdoor cafe tables behind Crestwood High were usually a quiet corner where students scrolled on their phones or traded snacks. Today, it became something else entirely, a stage, and Nalia Ward was being dragged onto it against her will. Rex Dalton didn't even give her time to wipe the soda from her shirt. He planted both palms on the handles of her wheelchair and shoved it roughly toward a metal lunch table. The front wheels slammed against the frame with a sharp clang. Nalia's body jolted forward before she steadied herself. "Let's park her right here," Rex announced loudly, as if unveiling a new school attraction. Finn immediately pulled out his phone, switching to TikTok mode. "Yo, check this out," he said, tilting the camera toward Nalia. "Crestwood's new pit stop. Free service for anyone needing emotional support wheels," Carter snorted, leaning in with exaggerated concern. "Oh, don't be shy, sweetheart. Smile for the followers." Nalia didn't smile. She didn't even blink. Her face remained still, too still, calm in a way that irritated them because it reflected none of the fear they wanted to see. Mason, always the obedient shadow behind Rex, lifted his foot and nudged the right wheel of her chair. A gentle tap at first, then another stronger one. "We should check the durability," he joked. "What if she rolls downhill by accident?" More laughter, more filming, more disgusting excitement from boys who had clearly never been challenged in their lives. Nalia felt the pressure building behind her as Rex leaned over her shoulder, his shadow swallowing her small frame. With a swift, entitled motion, he reached forward and seized the navy bow neatly tied at her collar. He yanked it, hard. The force nearly threw her backward. Her hands clenched the armrests to stay upright, her breath sharp for a split second, then steady again. Rex smirked down at her. "Stand up for yourself." "Oh, wait," the boys roared with laughter. But beneath her blazer, beneath the fabric and stitching, the hidden device tucked in her pocket vibrated, once silent, immediate, unmistakably activated. A thin line of light inside the seam glowed faintly, completely invisible to anyone but her. The moment Rex pulled her bow, the system opened a secure line, connecting to the FBI's off-site monitoring hub. Real-time transmission, real-time audio, real-time location tracking. Cadet Nalia Ward was officially under surveillance. The varsity jackets kept mocking her, unaware that every word they spat was being recorded, archived, and sent to federal servers. Finn kept filming, lowering himself until the camera was only inches from Nalia's chin. "Come on, wheels. Say something for the fans. A squeak? A whimper? Anything?" But she didn't give him a single sound. That silence was louder than their laughter, sharper than Rex's insults, more threatening than any punch she could have thrown. Rex's grin faltered for a split second, not because he felt guilty, but because he felt challenged. The way she looked at him, like she was analyzing him, like she could see straight through the bravado, the arrogance, the mask he wore. And Rex hated, despised that feeling. "What's with the staring?" he snapped, grabbing the back of her chair. "Think you're better than us?" Nalia simply tilted her head a fraction, eyes cold as winter steel. And Rex suddenly felt, for reasons he couldn't explain, a tiny shiver run down his spine. Her silence wasn't weakness. It was defiance. It was strategy. It was dangerous. And it made him want to break her even more. Because nothing enraged a bully like someone who refused to fear him. But that silence, the very thing Rex wanted to destroy, was about to push him into a line he should never cross. The air around the outdoor lunch tables had shifted, tightened, like a storm cloud forming overhead. Students who had been sitting nearby slowly drifted away, eyes wide, breaths shallow. They knew the varsity jackets were escalating, and no one with common sense wanted to be caught in the blast radius. Within minutes, the entire corner of the courtyard was empty, except for 6 boys and 1 girl in a wheelchair. Rex Dalton stood directly in front of Nalia, chest heaving, jaw tight, ego swelling. With every passing second she refused to react. That silent defiance had scraped at him, irritated him, provoked him in ways he didn't understand. He wanted a response, any response. Fear, anger, tears, something. But Nalia's face remained maddeningly calm. "Say something," Rex muttered, stepping closer. "Don't just sit there like you're made of stone." Nalia didn't blink. And that was the breaking point. Rex's fist shot forward without warning, a reckless, impulsive punch, powered purely by frustration. His knuckles crashed into her shoulder with a sickening thud. The force jerked her entire upper body sideways, slamming her head against the metal armrest of her wheelchair. The sound rang out, a sharp, brutal crack, cutting through the courtyard like a gunshot. Every student within earshot froze. A girl near the fountain gasped. A boy halfway down the steps dropped his drink. Even Mason flinched at the sound, but no one moved. No one intervened. Varsity jackets ruled this school, and everyone knew it. Rex shook out his fist with a twisted grin, adrenaline fueling him. "Now you feel that, Wheels?" But beneath Nalia's blazer, something else had felt it too. The thin biometric sensor pressed against her ribcage pulsed once hard. Then again. Then a third time, activating code level 2. Instantly, the device's internal systems surged to life. GPS transmission. Real-time audio stream. On. Emergency monitoring. On within seconds, her exact location, vital signs, and the sound of Rex's punch were sent directly to the FBI Junior Protective Cadet Command Center. In a secure room miles away, a red light on a console began flashing. A technician stiffened. "Impact detected," he announced. "Cadet Ward is compromised." The room snapped into motion. Back in the courtyard, Nalia's breath trembled for only a moment before she steadied it. She lifted her chin, her lips parted, and in a voice so small, so quiet, that only Rex could hear it, she whispered, "Enough." 2 syllables. Soft, calm, deadly. Rex blinked, thrown off for a fraction of a second. "What did you say?" Nalia didn't repeat it. She didn't need to. Rex heard her. Rex felt her. And something inside him twisted pride, fear, ego, something he couldn't name. He mistook her warning for weakness. "Oh, you think you're tough now?" he snarled, grabbing the back of her chair. "You think whispering is going to save you?" He leaned closer, lips curling. "I'm just getting started." But Nalia wasn't whispering to save herself. She was whispering because she knew what would happen next, because she understood exactly what that punch had triggered. Rex didn't. Finn didn't. None of them did. They couldn't possibly imagine that, at that very moment, federal agents were already on the move, and the countdown had officially begun. Because the instant Rex's fist touched Nalia, the clock on their freedom started ticking loud, merciless, and unstoppable. The outdoor bench area behind the cafeteria wasn't meant for violence. It was where students usually lounged, laughed, or pretended to study before class. But under Rex Dalton's command, it transformed into an arena, a twisted playground built entirely for humiliation. "Push her over there," Rex ordered, jerking his chin toward the far bench. His voice carried the casual cruelty of someone who'd never been told no. Finn and Carter moved in immediately, gripping the handles of Nalia's wheelchair without asking, without hesitation, without a shred of decency. They shoved her across the pavement so roughly that the chair rattled. Nalia's hands flew to the armrests, gripping them tightly, grounding herself. "Come on. She's lighter than my gym bag." Finn laughed. "We could toss her around all day." When they reached the next bench, Rex smirked and waved them back. "No, no. Push her again. Let's see how fast she goes." The boys obeyed. The wheelchair jerked forward once more, wheels scraping loudly across the concrete. Students from a distance stopped mid-step. Some whispered, some filmed, but none intervened, not when Rex was involved. As they passed under a tree, Finn lifted a full cup of soda, ice clinking, syrup sloshing, and dumped it over Nalia's head. The sticky liquid soaked into her hair, dripping down the sides of her face and onto her shirt. "Oops," he said with fake innocence. "Hydration is important." Troy, not wanting to be left out, raised his phone and leaned down until the lens hovered inches from her eyes. "Nalia Ward," he announced dramatically. "How does it feel to be Crestwood's most pathetic student? Any comments for your fans?" He zoomed in on her expression, expecting tears, panic, anger, but she gave him nothing, absolutely nothing. Her silence hit them harder than a scream could have. Rex scowled. He hated that look, hated that stillness, hated that she refused to give him the reaction he craved. "Hold her still," he snapped. Before anyone could process what he meant, Rex swung his fist. This time, he didn't aim for her shoulder. He aimed for her head. His knuckles collided with the side of her skull, a blunt, vicious impact that echoed off the empty benches. Nalia's head whipped sideways, a sharp gasp escaping her lips before she clenched her jaw, grounding herself again. The moment Rex's fist connected, something far away responded. A silent command was triggered inside the small communication device stitched into her pocket. School perimeter partial lock activated. Within seconds, gates around Crestwood High altered their security settings, doors closer automatically. Unmarked patrol units in the vicinity received a soft ping, directing them to shift route. It was subtle, invisible, a soft lockdown no student or teacher would recognize. Rex stepped back, flexing the fingers of his punching hand. "That's what happens when you ignore me," he barked, grinning wide. Finn cackled. "Damn, Rex! That sounded like a real hit." And indeed it had, because the microphone inside Nalia's device captured it perfectly. Every decibel, every vibration, every cruel laugh afterward. And somewhere deep in a federal database, the audio was already being appended to a file titled Rex Dalton Assault Evidence. But Rex didn't know that, couldn't know that. He thought he was just having fun, proving dominance over someone he believed was too weak to fight back. He had no idea he was documenting his own downfall. Nalia raised her head slowly, meeting his eyes again, bruised, shaken, but unbroken. And Rex, drunk on power, laughed louder than ever, a laugh that would cost him dearly. Meanwhile, in the distance, a black SUV cut through traffic fast, aggressive, and headed straight for Crestwood High. The hallway leading to the back courtyard was unusually quiet, a narrow stretch of concrete and lockers where voices echoed too easily. It felt colder than the rest of the school, as if the air itself sensed something was about to go wrong. Rex Dalton shoved Nalia's wheelchair forward with unnecessary force, the rubber wheels squealing as they skidded across the floor. Carter followed behind, glancing nervously over his shoulder. He looked less confident now, less enthusiastic than before. "Dude, maybe we should chill," Carter muttered. "People are watching. Someone's gonna tell a teacher." Rex didn't slow down. "So? Let them tell. Keller doesn't do crap to us anyway." At the end of the hallway, Rex suddenly twisted the chair to the right and slammed it against the wall. Metal clanged. Nalia's body jerked violently. Her shoulder struck the cold brick hard enough to send a sharp sting down her arm. Carter winced. "Rex, man, come on!" But Rex was locked in. Too far gone. His ego had taken over, and humiliation had turned into obsession. "She's been giving me that face all morning," he snapped. "Like she's untouchable. Like she's better than us." He leaned in closer, sneering. "Let's see how better she feels now." Nalia steadied her breath, not because she was calm, she was hurting, her head still throbbing from the earlier punches, but because she needed precision. Her fingers slid toward the underside of her right armrest. Tap, 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 tap. 3 short, deliberate bursts, too subtle for Rex, too quick for Carter, but perfectly recognizable to the FBI's Junior Protective Cadet Protocol. M7. The distress signal for severe assault. Identify perpetrators. Immediate federal monitoring required. The tiny transmitter inside the wheelchair vibrated once in acknowledgement. A soft hum like a whisper only she could feel confirmed that the signal had been sent. Across the country, a silent alert flashed across a guarded screen at JPC Command. "Cadet Ward has issued an M7 signal," one agent announced. "Patch it through," another replied. Back in the hallway, Nalia kept her eyes lowered, hiding the flicker of relief that threatened to show. She couldn't lose control now, not when things were finally in motion. Carter rubbed the back of his neck. His voice was almost a whisper. "Rex, I really think we're pushing it too far." Rex wheeled around and shoved Carter backward. "Shut up! I'm not done." Then he turned to Nalia with a darkness in his eyes that didn't belong in a high school hallway. "You think staying quiet makes you strong? You think staring me down makes you special?" He gripped the handles of her chair. I'll show you special. He raised his fist, his third attempt to break something that refused to bend. But before the punch could land, Nalia's earpiece blinked. A tiny green flash. Then another. Then a third. The signal every cadet was trained to recognize before anything else. FBI has received your transmission. FBI is listening. FBI is coming. The world seemed to slow for a moment. Nalia lifted her eyes, meeting Rex's gaze again, not with fear, but with a terrifying calmness that he couldn't interpret. Carter swallowed hard. He didn't know why, but something about her expression made him step back. "What the hell is she looking at?" Rex muttered. He pulled his fist back, ready to throw a punch that would change everything. And just as his knuckles cut through the air, something happened that none of them, absolutely none of them, expected. The main courtyard of Crestwood High was never quiet, not even for a second. It was the beating heart of the school. Loud voices, rushing footsteps, laughter, gossip, the usual teenage chaos. But that morning, something shifted. Something broke the rhythm. Something made the noise falter. Rex Dalton dragged Nalia's wheelchair into the open center of the courtyard, as if he were presenting her to an audience. Students turned, phones raised, whispers spread like wildfire. "There they are, what's he doing now? Is he seriously hitting her? Oh my God, someone get a teacher!" But no teacher arrived. No adult stepped in, just dozens of students watching with wide eyes, paralyzed by fear of the varsity jackets. Rex didn't hesitate, didn't think, didn't breathe. He just lifted his fist, and with every ounce of anger, humiliation, and bruised ego boiling inside him, Rex threw his third punch far stronger than the ones before. His knuckles smashed into the side of Nalia's head with brutal force. The impact echoed across the courtyard like a brutal thunderclap. A collective gasp swept through the students. A girl screamed. Someone dropped their backpack. A cluster of freshmen ran toward the nearest teacher, shouting, "He's going to kill her." The wheelchair rocked violently, wheels scraping the concrete. Nalia's body tipped sideways, her head snapping down toward the armrest. For a terrifying moment, she looked like she might fall out completely. But she didn't. Her hand gripped the armrest at the last possible second, steadying herself, pulling her body upright again. Pain radiated across her skull, but her eyes, those cold, sharp, unbroken eyes, remained fixed on Rex. That look was not the look of a victim. It was the look of someone taking mental notes, someone who was waiting, someone who knew something Rex didn't. Rex stumbled back half a step, not from remorse, not from fear of consequences, but from confusion. That look shouldn't exist on the face of someone he just hit. Not after that punch. Not after everything he'd done today. Why are you still staring like that?" he barked, voice cracking ever so slightly. Around them, the courtyard erupted. Some students shouted for help. Others yelled at Rex to stop. A few, trembling, kept recording, unable to tear their eyes away. But amid the chaos, Nalia heard something else. A low hum, a vibration in the air, a disturbance that didn't come from the students. It came from above. At first, it was faint, just a tremor in the breeze. Then it grew stronger, deeper, louder. A heavy, rhythmic chopping sound rolled across the sky, shaking the leaves in the trees, rattling the loose windows of the science wing. Heads turned upward. "What is that? Is that a helicopter? Why is it flying so low?" The ground itself seemed to tremble as the shadow swept across the courtyard tiles. And then it appeared. A black helicopter with federal markings cut through the clouds, descending fast. Sunlight glinted off its steel body. Wind blasted across the courtyard as its rotor thundered in the air. Students staggered back, shielding their faces. Phones shot upward, capturing every second. Whispers turned into screams. No one, not a single soul, knew it was coming for Nalia. Not Rex. Not Carter. Not the teachers rushing outside. Not even the principal bursting through the doors. But Nalia knew. Her earpiece flashed again, confirming everything she'd already pieced together. Rex stared at the helicopter, color draining from his face. For the first time that day, something inside him cracked. Doubt. Real, icy doubt. What? What is this? He whispered. Why is that here? Nalia didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her silence said enough. Rex took a full step back, finally realizing too late that he might have hit something he was never supposed to touch. And above them, the helicopter roared lower, its shadow expanding. The FBI's arrival had only begun. The black SUV tore into Crestwood High's parking lot like a bullet, fast, decisive, unapologetically federal. Tires screeched across the asphalt, the engine growling as it skidded to a halt diagonally across 2 parking spaces. Students in the courtyard whipped their heads toward the sound, phones already rising instinctively. They knew chaos when they heard it. But none of them expected this. The back door of the SUV flew open. A woman stepped out, marched out. Special Agent Marlene Pierce, tall, razor-focused, eyes hidden behind dark tactical sunglasses. Her black tactical vest flashed bold white letters. FBI She moved with the kind of authority that made everyone around her straighten their backs without thinking. 2 more agents exited behind her, scanning the area, hands resting near their holstered weapons. The parking lot buzzed, students whispering, recording, gasping. Is that the actual FBI? What happened? Who are they here for? Pierce didn't waste a second. She marched toward the courtyard with long, sharp strides, boots striking the pavement like gunshots. The wind from the helicopter overhead whipped her coat behind her in a way that made her look even more formidable, like a storm given human form. Students instinctively parted, clearing a path for her without being asked. Phones pointed at her from every angle. Live streams popped up across social media faster than anyone could count. And then she raised her voice, a voice trained to command rooms, halt riots, and cut through absolute chaos. Where is Cadet Nalia Ward? The words exploded through the courtyard. Silence followed. A suffocating, heavy silence that made every student freeze in place. You could hear a pin drop. You could hear hearts stop. Cadet, cadet, cadet. The word echoed across the quad, hitting the varsity boys like a slap. Rex's face drained of color. Carter stumbled backward. Finn lowered his phone, hand shaking. Cadet? Finn whispered. What does that mean? Troy's lips trembled. She's FBI? No way. No freaking way. Even students far across the courtyard felt a chill crawl up their spines. Agent Pierce's attention locked onto the scene near the center of the courtyard, where Nalia's wheelchair sat tilted slightly from Rex's. Earlier blows, bruises visible on her cheek, soda dripping from her hair. All eyes turned to her. To the girl no one defended. To the girl everyone thought was powerless. And suddenly, the entire school realized they had never known who she really was. Pierce strode directly toward Nalia, her officers forming a protective wedge around her. She dropped to one knee beside the wheelchair, scanning Nalia's injuries with a clinical, controlled fury. Cadet Ward, Pierce said, her voice low but pulsating with authority. We're here. You're safe now. The students looked at each other with wide, horrified eyes. Cadet Ward. Safe now. Every word added another crack in the illusion Crestwood held about Nalia. Rex took a shaky step back. Wait, she can't be. She's just some girl. Pierce snapped her head toward him, her expression lethal. You laid hands on a federal cadet, she said coldly, voice razor-sharp. Do you understand what that means? Rex didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because for the first time in his life, he had no idea what he'd just done, but he knew it was catastrophic. Students gasped. Phones zoomed in. Live stream comments blew up in real time. And Agent Pierce wasn't finished. She stood, pointing directly at the varsity group. You 5 do not move. Her words hit harder than Rex's punches ever could. The varsity jackets, untouchable kings of Crestwood High, were suddenly nothing more than panicked boys trapped under the weight of a federal investigation. And the truth they'd been running toward all morning was finally catching up, because the brutal, undeniable reality was about to be revealed. The courtyard seemed to shrink as Special Agent Marlene Pierce stepped fully into view, the sun glinting off the white FBI lettering on her vest. She moved with purpose, precise, unshakable, terrifyingly calm. Students held their breath as she knelt beside Nalia's wheelchair. Her posture not just protective, but reverent. This wasn't how a teacher comforted a hurt student. This was how a commanding officer assessed a wounded comrade. "Nalia," Pierce said quietly, brushing aside a strand of soda-soaked hair. "Look at me." Nalia lifted her eyes. They weren't panicked. They weren't desperate. They were controlled, trained. Pierce nodded once. "Good. Stay with me. You executed protocol correctly." A ripple spread through the crowd. "Protocol? What protocol? Is she FBI? No way. She's a cadet? A federal cadet?" The whispers grew louder, buzzing with disbelief and fear. Students stepped backward, without realizing they were moving, as if distance might somehow protect them from whatever trouble Rex and his crew had just summoned onto the campus. Pierce gently tilted Nalia's chin to inspect the bruising forming on the right side of her face. Her jaw tightened. She didn't shout. She didn't threaten. The quiet fury radiating from her was far more dangerous. Behind her, Rex tried to regain control of the narrative, his last pathetic attempt to salvage the illusion of power. She started it," Rex stammered, voice cracking. "She looked at me weird. She was provoking us." The excuse was so weak, so embarrassingly desperate, that even Carter flinched. Pierce slowly rose to her feet, turning to face Rex like a judge, about to deliver a verdict. "Oh," she said softly, too softly. "She provoked you?" Rex swallowed, stepping back involuntarily. Pierce took one step forward. "This girl," she said, pointing at Nalia, "is a protected witness under the Junior Protective Cadet Program. She is a federal asset. And you," she jabbed a finger toward Rex's chest, "laid your hands on her." Students gasped. A few covered their mouths. Finn whispered, voice shaking, "Federal asset." Pierce's voice grew sharper, slicing through the courtyard like razor wire. "She is a federal witness. And you boys just assaulted her on school property, in broad daylight, in front of dozens of recording students." She paused, letting the words sink in. "And you hit her multiple times." Rex's bravado vanished instantly. His lips trembled as he tried to speak, but no sound came out. Mason stared at the ground. Finn lowered his phone so fast he nearly dropped it. Troy's face went ghost white. "But," Rex managed to choke out, I didn't know." Pierce didn't let him finish. "That's the point," she snapped. "You didn't know, because you didn't care. You saw someone you thought was vulnerable, and you decided that gave you power." She leaned closer, her voice dropping into a deadly whisper. "And now, you've punched your way into a federal case." The color drained from every varsity jacket's face at the same time. The truth hit them harder than any physical blow ever could. Their future scholarships, reputations, sports careers, family pride, everything they thought untouchable was suddenly dangling over a cliff by a single snapped thread. Students around them whispered in shock, some recording, others shaking their heads. "Holy crap, they're done. This is literally a felony. They hit a federal witness. They're going to jail." Rex stumbled backward, as if the weight of Pierce's words physically shoved him. "That's right," Pierce continued coldly. "You didn't just bully a student. You assaulted a federal witness. You interfered with an active protection program. And every second of it," she tapped the small microphone clipped to her shoulder, "has been transmitted and archived." Silence fell again, a silence thick with dread, a silence that swallowed the varsity boys whole, because, for the first time in their lives, they were face to face with consequences they couldn't charm, threaten, or lie their way out of. And yet, their nightmare was nowhere near finished. In fact, it was only beginning. The courtyard no longer felt like a school. It felt like a crime scene. Yellow barriers hadn't been placed yet, but they weren't needed. Students naturally backed away as the FBI agents moved in, forming an invisible perimeter around the area. Teachers tried to intervene, but agents raised gloved hands. "Step back, please." This is an active investigation. No one leaves the courtyard. The words struck the air with military precision. Phones were lifted everywhere, but not for long. Agent Torres, tall and stone-faced, moved swiftly through the crowd. "Everyone who recorded the incident," he announced, "hand over your devices for immediate evidence collection." Students hesitated just long enough to reveal fear. Then they complied. One by one, phones were surrendered. Torres and another agent placed each device into labeled evidence bags. Even the bystanders understood this wasn't optional. Meanwhile, Agent Pierce stood at the center, near Nalia's wheelchair. With a curt nod, she signaled to another agent beside a handheld console. "Pull footage from camera C-17. The agent tapped a few commands. A projector flickered to life, broadcasting onto the brick wall of the main building. And suddenly, the truth played out in raw, cinematic brutality for the entire school to witness. Frame 1. Rex stands over Nalia, fist raised. Frame 2. He punches her hard enough to jolt her sideways. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Frame 3. Carter shoves her wheelchair into a wall, her body snapping with the motion. A chorus of horrified murmurs rose. Frame 4. Finn dumps soda over her head, filming gleefully. And finally, frame 5. Rex hits her a second, then a third time. The footage paused on the exact frame of his fist slamming into her skull. The still image hung in the air like a verdict. Students covered their mouths. Some shook their heads in disbelief. And others, those who once praised the varsity jackets, looked down at the ground in shame. Rex's knees almost buckled. "No! That video is taken out of context!" Agent Torres turned sharply toward him. "The context is clear. Multiple assaults, repeated harassment, physical endangerment, on federal property, during school hours." Another agent spoke, voice cold and unwavering. "This is no longer bullying. This is felony assault." The words seemed to punch the air itself. Rex's face drained. Carter stumbled backward. Finn's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The crowd stirred, a wave of whispers rising. "Oh my God! They actually committed a felony. They're so screwed. This is jail, actual jail." Rex shook his head violently, clutching at the last threads of denial. "No, this isn't fair. It was a joke. A stupid joke," he shouted, voice cracking under the weight of fear. But no one believed him. Not the students, not the teachers, not even his own friends. Agent Pierce stepped forward, eyes burning with controlled fury. "A joke? You call 3 punches to the head a joke? You call slamming a wheelchair into a wall a joke? You call harassing a disabled witness a joke?" Her voice sliced through the courtyard. "You weren't joking. You were assaulting. And now, you will face the consequences." Rex looked wildly around him, at the students filming, at the agents closing in, at the evidence projected larger than life behind him. And for the first time since the morning began, he looked small. A king dethroned. A tyrant exposed. A bully stripped of his armor. The FBI agents circled closer. Torres lifted his radio. "We have clear evidence. Prepare restraints." Students held their breath, because the next thing that would happen the next moment would change everything. And the first sentence of justice was about to be delivered right here, right now, in the middle of Crestwood High. The courtyard had never witnessed a spectacle like this. Not during pep rallies, not during championship celebrations, not even during fire drills gone wrong. Hundreds of students crowded around the center of the quad, phones held high, live streams exploding across social media. And at the eye of the storm stood the varsity jackets, shaking, pale, dethroned, and about to face a reality they had never imagined. Agent Torres stepped forward, voice booming with authority that left no room for debate. "Rex Dalton, Carter Hayes, Finn Morales, Mason Tate, Troy Bennett." He paused. "You are under arrest." A collective gasp rippled through the campus. Before Rex could process the words, 2 agents seized his arms. "No, no, get off me!" he shouted, trying to jerk free. His voice cracked with panic. "I didn't do anything. She just..." His excuses collapsed under the weight of the evidence displayed moments earlier. When he twisted to resist, Agent Torres executed a flawless takedown, swift, clean, and brutal in its efficiency. Rex hit the ground hard, face pressed against the concrete as cuffs clicked around his wrists. The courtyard erupted with shouts. "Holy crap, did they just slam him? This is insane! They're actually getting arrested!" Meanwhile, the rest of the varsity jackets fared no better. Finn was the first to break completely. "Please, please, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I was just following Rex," he sobbed, as agents locked his wrists behind him. Carter cursed under his breath, but he didn't resist. Mason trembled so violently the agent had to steady him. Troy muttered, "My dad's gonna kill me," over and over, as if the words might magically change something. But nothing could. Not today. Not after what they'd done. Live stream comments poured in. "Oh my God, this is real. They hit a federal cadet? Bye-bye scholarships. This is the craziest day of school ever." And then amid the chaos another figure appeared. Principal Keller burst through the courtyard doors, sweat glistening on his forehead. His tie was crooked, his breathing ragged. He pushed through students, shouting, "Stop! Stop! What do you think you're doing to my boys?" Pierce didn't even turn fully to face him. "They're not your boys," she said coolly. "They're federal suspects." Keller puffed up his chest, desperate, frantic. "They're children. They're just kids making mistakes. Let me handle this internally. Please, please don't escalate this." Pierce finally faced him, her eyes like sharpened steel. "Internally?" she repeated, voice dripping with contempt. "You want to handle this internally?" Keller swallowed. "Why, yes. They're good kids. Athletes. Leaders. This will ruin their futures." Pierce stepped closer, her voice slicing the air in two. "They didn't just break a school rule, Mr. Keller. They assaulted a federal witness." She leaned in. "Tell me, what part of felony assault do you not understand?" Students whispered, eyes darting between Keller and the agents. Keller's face went pale, so pale it looked almost gray. Because deep down, he knew exactly what this meant. Pierce wasn't done. "And let me be perfectly clear," she said, voice rising so the entire courtyard could hear her. "Any attempt to cover up or interfere with this case will be treated as obstruction of justice." Keller froze. That single sentence hit him like a sniper bullet. A few students gasped. Others stared at him with new understanding, because now everyone knew Keller was hiding something. Something big. Something rotten, and Agent Pierce had just torn open the first layer of the truth. As the varsity jackets were lifted to their feet, wrists bound, panic in their eyes, students recorded every moment, every stumble, every plea, every pathetic flicker of regret. The school that once worshipped these boys now watched them fall, and yet, the biggest downfall of Crestwood High hadn't even begun. The real collapse was still coming. The principal's office, usually pristine, polished, and intimidating, felt different now. The blinds were half closed, letting in thin slashes of light that cut across the floor like interrogation beams. The trophies on the shelves, once symbols of Crestwood's pride, suddenly looked hollow, fake, fragile. Principal Keller sat behind his desk, hands trembling, tie loosened, sweat beading along his hairline. He looked nothing like the authoritative figure students feared. He looked like a man waiting for a verdict he already knew was coming. The door opened with a heavy click. 3 FBI agents stepped inside, led by Agent Pierce. Following them was the district superintendent and 2 members of the school board, faces stern, lips pressed into thin, unforgiving lines. Keller stood halfway, voice shaking. "Let me explain." Pierce didn't let him finish. "We'll go straight to the point," she said coldly, placing a thick folder on his desk. "Our investigation into this morning's assault brought up something far more concerning." She opened the folder. Inside were printed emails, reports, screenshots, dates, names. Keller's heart plummeted. "We obtained these records from the district's compliance archive," Pierce continued. "Over the past 18 months, your school received 14 separate complaints about harassment, violence, and discrimination involving the varsity jackets. The room tensed. The superintendent's eyes hardened. One board member let out a quiet, furious sigh. Keller swallowed. Those were exaggerated claims. Teenagers overreact. I didn't want to damage the boy's future. Pierce slammed the folder shut. And what about Nalia's future? Her voice cut sharp as glass. What about the disabled students who complained? The freshman who transferred because of harassment? The sophomore whose locker was set on fire? Do their futures not matter? Keller froze. The board member stepped forward. The district trusted you to protect these students, Mr. Keller. Instead, you protected the bullies. Keller collapsed into his chair, shoulders shaking. I just wanted Crestwood to look good. The school's reputation. Pierce stepped closer, her presence suffocating. And what about the boy in the wheelchair last fall? She demanded. His complaint was dismissed within 2 hours. You called it attention-seeking. He never returned to school. Keller buried his face in his hands. Pierce leaned in, her voice dropping to a deadly whisper. And the girl today? She paused. Was she not worth protecting? Keller stammered. I didn't know. She never said anything. She didn't have to, Pierce snapped. You saw everything. You heard the complaints. You chose to bury them. The superintendent crossed her arms. Mr. Keller, your negligence has endangered students, enabled violence, and violated state and federal safety protocols. Keller's breathing quickened. Please, I can fix this. Please don't escalate. The words sounded eerily similar to Rex's pleas in the courtyard. Pierce exchanged a look with the superintendent, who nodded. Effective immediately, the superintendent declared. You are suspended from duty. District authorities will open a formal investigation into your misconduct and obstruction. Keller's eyes widened in horror. No, please, this will ruin me. I only wanted what was best for the school. Pierce's stare was icy. And the child in the wheelchair didn't deserve what was best for him? She shot back. Nalia didn't deserve protection? Those 14 students didn't deserve action? Keller's mouth opened, but no words came out. He sagged into his chair, a man crushed under the weight of the truth he had tried to outrun. Outside the office, reporters' voices could already be heard echoing in the hallway. Microphones, camera shutters, news vans. Everything he feared was happening in real time. Pierce turned to leave. Keller, she said at the doorway, you didn't protect your school's reputation. You destroyed it. He collapsed forward, elbows on his knees, hands covering his face. Within hours, the scandal would explode across local and national media, and Crestwood High would never recover. The police station conference room felt more like a morgue than a meeting space, cold, sterile, echoing with a tension that no one dared to break. The varsity boys sat in a tight line against the wall, each handcuffed, each pale with dread. Their parents filed into the room moments later, frantic and breathless, the panic visible on their faces. Rex's mother pushed her way through first. Her heels clicked sharply against the floor, her voice rising even before she saw him. Where is my son? Where's Rex? What is going on? When she finally spotted him, slumped, cuffed, eyes red, her expression shattered. Oh my God, Rex, she cried, rushing to him. What happened to you? What did they do? Agent Pierce stepped forward calmly, a folder in hand. Ma'am, your son is not the victim here. Rex looked down, unable to meet her gaze. Other parents crowded in. Carter's father demanding answers, Finn's mother crying, Mason's parents stunned into silence. Troy's father paced the room, muttering about lawyers and lawsuits, desperate for control he no longer had. Pierce opened the folder and placed it neatly on the table. You are all here because your sons have been formally charged. The room went pin-drop silent. Pierce continued, voice steady and merciless. The charges include felony assault, harassment, intimidation, and obstruction of a federal protection program. Gasps erupted. No, this must be a mistake. Finn's mother sobbed. Felony? Carter's father snapped. They're just kids. Troy's father shouted. You can't ruin their futures over a school fight. Pierce raised an eyebrow. A school fight? They punched a disabled federal witness multiple times, in front of cameras and live streams, and then attempted to flee. She tapped the folder again. The evidence is overwhelming. Rex's mother shook her head violently, tears streaking down her cheeks. No, no, Rex is a good kid. He's about to receive a full scholarship for basketball. This will destroy everything we worked for. Pierce didn't flinch. A lawyer sitting beside her spoke for the first time, voice icy and precise. "Ma'am," he said, adjusting his glasses, "there is no scholarship now. There is no athletic future. This charge follows him permanently." Silence, thick, crushing. Rex's mother staggered backward, as if physically hit. "No, please tell me this isn't real." But the lawyer wasn't done. Additionally, due to the severity of the charges and involvement of a federal witness, their juvenile records may be transferred to adult court. That sentence sucked the air out of the room. Carter's father sat down heavily, face drained. Finn burst into tears. Mason whispered, "Dad, I'm sorry," but his father only put his head in his hands. Rex finally broke. "Mom, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." His mother looked at him, shock, disappointment, heartbreak, all tangled together. "How could you do this? How could you throw everything away?" Rex had no answer. He never did. Pierce closed the folder with finality. "Your sons made choices, and now they face consequences." As parents cried, argued, pleaded, and crumbled under the weight of reality, the federal agents began preparing paperwork. No one could stop what was already in motion. And meanwhile, Nalia Ward remained silent, recovering, calm, but preparing to deliver a speech that would shake Crestwood High to its core. The Crestwood High auditorium had never been this full. Students packed every row, teachers lined the walls, and a quiet buzz filled the air, anxious, curious, electrified. Word had spread like wildfire. Nalia Ward, the girl in the wheelchair, the girl everyone saw as fragile, silent, invisible, was about to speak. On stage, the FBI stood to the side as silent guardians. Agent Pierce watched from the wings, arms crossed, expression unreadable, but proud. The principal's chair sat empty, a symbol of the collapse the school could no longer hide. Nalia maneuvered her wheelchair to the center of the stage. She held no notes. No script, no trembling hands, only a calmness that felt heavier than silence, sharper than fear. When she stopped, the room stilled immediately. She looked out over the sea of faces, some ashamed, some angry, some guilty, many stunned. Then she spoke, her voice steady, unwavering, carrying farther than anyone expected. "I know what you all saw," she began. "I know what happened wasn't a secret. It wasn't hidden in a corner. It was public, loud, cruel." A ripple moved through the audience. Nalia continued, eyes locked onto the front rows. "But what bothered me most wasn't the punches. It wasn't the names. It wasn't even the fear." She paused. It was how normal it all felt to everyone watching. The room tensed. Students shifted uncomfortably. Some lowered their eyes. Nalia didn't soften her words. "For some of you, seeing a black girl in a wheelchair get bullied wasn't shocking. You thought, that's just how school is. That's how some people get treated." Her voice sharpened, cutting through the air like a blade. "But let me make one thing very clear." She lifted her chin. "Sitting in a wheelchair does not mean weak. Being black does not mean vulnerable. And being silent does not mean I will endure your cruelty." The words hit the auditorium like thunder rolling through an enclosed space. Students leaned forward. Teachers pressed a hand to their chest. Even the FBI agents stood a little taller. Nalia wasn't done. "I survived because I had support. I had a system behind me. But most victims don't. Most bullied kids don't have a federal team rushing in." She tightened her grip on the armrest. "So, if you saw what happened to me and stayed quiet, imagine how many are suffering, silently, every single day." A few students wiped their eyes. Some nodded. Many could not look at her directly, and to anyone who ever felt small, ignored, or pushed aside, she scanned the faces before her. "You are not weak. You are not invisible. And you deserve protection, not pity. Her voice rose with finality, not anger power. I won't forget what happened here. And neither should you. When she finished, the silence broke like a dam collapsing. The entire auditorium erupted. Students leapt to their feet. Applause thundered against the walls, loud, fierce, relentless. It wasn't sympathy. It wasn't pity. It was respect, a standing ovation worthy of someone who had stood figuratively and spiritually despite every attempt to break her. Backstage, Agent Pierce exchanged a look with her team. The moment had come. A special offer, one that would change Nalia Ward's future forever, was waiting to be delivered. The private FBI operations room inside Crestwood High was nothing like the rest of the building. No chatter, no chaos, no fluorescent school lights. Instead, it was dim, quiet, humming with encrypted radios and soft LED panels. A tactical map glowed faintly on the wall. Screens displayed live surveillance footage. The air carried the sharp, metallic scent of authority. Nalia Ward sat in the center of the room, her wheelchair positioned beneath a soft overhead light. Her bruises were visible now, purple forming along her jawline, a faint swelling near her temple. But her expression remained steady. She looked like someone who had been carved, not broken, by what happened. Agent Marlene Pierce entered, closing the door gently behind her. No dramatic slam, no intimidation tactics, just respect, the kind reserved for someone who had earned it. "Nalia," Pierce said, pulling up a chair across from her. "You did exceptionally well today." Nalia swallowed, hands resting neatly on her lap. "I just followed protocol." "No," Pierce corrected, leaning forward. "You demonstrated instinct, judgment, composure far beyond what we expect from junior protective cadets." Nalia's eyes widened slightly, a rare crack in her otherwise controlled demeanor. Pierce continued, her voice low and deliberate. "In all my years with the Bureau, I've seen adults-trained operatives fall apart under less pressure than what you faced. You endured physical assault, emotional intimidation, and public humiliation. And through all of it, you kept your mind clear. You executed the communication protocols flawlessly. You stayed alive." Silence settled for a moment. Good silence, heavy with recognition. Pierce reached into a folder and set a document on the table. A letter, a badge outline embossed in silver. The emblem of the JPC program. "Nalia Ward," Pierce said, "I want to extend you an official invitation to join the Junior Protective Cadet Program as a full operative. Not trial status, not provisional. You've proven yourself beyond that." Nalia stared at the letter, her breath caught not with fear, but with something deeper, something fierce. "Hope. This means," Nalia whispered. Pierce nodded. "It means when you turn 18. The path to becoming an FBI agent will already be paved. You'll have mentorship, field simulations, tactical training, and a direct entry track to the academy." Nalia blinked rapidly, her version of showing emotion. "Why me?" Pierce smiled, not warmly but proudly, like a commander acknowledging a rising soldier. "Because today," she said softly, "you didn't just survive." She placed a steady hand on Nalia's shoulder, grounding her with the weight of the moment. "You won!" The words echoed in the room, sharp, powerful, undeniable. Nalia exhaled, a single tear forming in the corner of her eye before she caught it with the back of her wrist. She refused to cry fully, not from weakness, but from strength. "I'll accept," she said, voice clear. Pierce nodded once, her expression shifting into professional resolve. "Good. Then your real training begins." As Pierce gathered the documents, the door to the room opened slightly, letting in a sliver of bright hallway light, warm, hopeful, almost cinematic. Behind that door awaited the final chapter of this story, a closing moment everyone in Crestwood would remember, and the final scene would leave the entire school and every viewer utterly satisfied. A week later, Crestwood High didn't look like the same school. The courtyard, the very place where violence had erupted, was now filled with rows of folding chairs, a small stage, and banners carrying a new motto, the district had adopted. Strength is protected here. Students gathered in clusters, buzzing with anticipation. Teachers stood together, calmer than they had been in months. Even the air felt lighter, as if the entire school had exhaled after years of pressure. At the front of the stage sat the newly appointed interim principal, Miss Harrington, flanked by district officials and members of the student council. The school board had moved fast after the scandal. Too many complaints had surfaced for them to hesitate. Today wasn't just a ceremony. It was a rebirth. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. The back doors opened, and Nalia Ward entered. Her wheelchair rolled forward with steady confidence. Bruises faded, posture straight, her presence commanding in a way no one had seen before. Conversations quieted, heads turned. Students nudged each other, smiling, whispering, "There she is. She's the reason the school changed. She's the bravest person here." Nalia reached the stage and joined Miss Harrington at the podium. The principal adjusted the microphone. "Today," she began, "we recognize a student whose strength forced this school to confront its failures and to rebuild into something better." Nalia's name echoed across the courtyard as applause swelled loud, full, genuine, not polite, not performative, grateful. Harrington continued, her tone firm. Crestwood will now implement new protection policies for vulnerable students, anti-harassment protocols, immediate response systems, mandatory reporting, and clear consequences for any student who engages in violence or discrimination. Students nodded, some even cheering. It was a long overdue correction. Then, as if on cue, the district superintendent stepped forward. "As for the students responsible for last week's incident," she announced, "they have been formally charged in juvenile court and are permanently banned from returning to Crestwood High." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Relief, satisfaction, closure. The varsity Jackets, once the school's untouchable kings, were now nothing more than a cautionary tale. Their reign had ended not quietly, not gracefully, but decisively, and all because they underestimated one girl. Miss Harrington turned toward Nalia. "We would now like to honor Nalia Ward for her extraordinary courage." As Nalia wheeled to the podium, the entire courtyard rose. A standing ovation. Hundreds of students on their feet. Applause that seemed to shake the sky. Nalia waited for the noise to settle before speaking. When it did, her voice carried with the quiet power everyone now recognized as her signature. "A week ago," she said, "I rolled into this courtyard terrified. Not of bullies, not of being targeted, but of being ignored. Today, I stand before you not because I'm special, but because I refuse to stay silent." A wave of applause surged again, but she lifted her hand gently, signaling for calm. "And I hope no one here ever forgets this. Strength doesn't always shout. Sometimes it sits quietly in a wheelchair, waiting for the moment it needs to rise." Students erupted once more, cheering, clapping, some even tearing up. When the ceremony ended, Nalia turned and began wheeling through the courtyard, the same path she had taken during the worst moments of her life, now transformed. Students stepped aside with respect. Some reached out to clap her shoulder. Others simply applauded as she passed. The school that once watched her suffer now celebrated her victory. A complete reversal. A full-circle moment. And as the camera faded out, her voice closed the story with a final, unforgettable line. "Never underestimate someone just because they're quiet. You don't know who they are, or how they might change your future." And just like that, the boys who thought they ruled the school learned the hardest lesson of their lives. You don't get to break someone just because you think they're weaker, especially when that quiet girl in a wheelchair turns out to be the one person the FBI would burn the sky to protect. Her silence wasn't fear, it was power. And their downfall was the price of underestimating it. If you were in Nalia's place, what would you have done differently? And hey, if this story grabbed your attention, make sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss the next justice-packed episode.